I have finished the calculations. Launch protocol initiated. Launch in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Every time you play a game, there is that moment. That moment of elation of seeing something for the very first time, or perhaps the moment of dread when realizing that doom is around the corner and the game is about to end. That moment is always there. I've had my fair share of moments, and I'm sure you have too. There are always those moments that make you feel fuzzy, that make you feel sad, that make you feel wholesome, or anything in between. It's the moments that games garner an emotional response from anyone here on Earth. Here I want to dissect some of those moments that I've had, and in an attempt to get people to really understand what games are, I hope this video shows you that they're more than just something that you do on Saturday night when you're bored. They're art. So here, I present to you the moments that click. There are 4 major game endings that will be spoiled in order to make my point clear. Though, to be fair, if you haven't played them yet, since some of them are nearing a decade old, I think you have bigger problems than me wasting your time for a couple of minutes. The games included in this video are BioShock Infinite, The Walking Dead, Modern Warfare 2, and Minecraft. Seriously, I'd be surprised if none of you actually played any of these games yet. But, you know, disclaimers and all. Gotta have them. If you've yet to play any of these gems, then please, at the very least, go get them in like GOG or something, or actually just, pay the creators directly, or I don't really care how you get it. Really, at the end of the day, as long as you just have the ability to enjoy them yourself before I dig deep into them, I'll be a happy man. Alright, enough of the theatrics. It's about time we properly dissect our first big boy. For those unfamiliar to Minecraft, there are certain basics of the game that one must understand if they wish to progress. You start off in an isolated landscape with nothing but you and nature, deadly silent. The art is pretty, it's a bit sparse and somewhat primitive in certain aspects, but soon enough you begin to get the childlike curiosity as to how you must interact with this game to win. So, you go full-blown Hulk Hogan on some raunchy tree boys, and you notice that it starts to break. You keep hitting it, and eventually you get the block. And as if on purpose, the soundtrack cues in. Nothing is more perfect than that moment. Honestly. And what's crazy is when you first played the game, you never would have guessed that moment was the moment you'd remember the most. Absolutely bodying a tree and then C418 plays something hauntingly sweet in your ears. It's a really odd experience to have. At that point, you realize that this game isn't like those other survival games you've played. This is the original. This is where the aesthetic and the atmosphere were more important than the gameplay or the story. Because of this moment, you fell in love with the game. If you deny it, then I really do urge you to just try it again. Try and open up a new world and try and experience that same thing you experienced the first time you played survival. Minecraft's soundtrack is the very definition of nostalgia for anyone who has grown up around its launch date during 2010. Some games have more music I remember than Minecraft, but no soundtrack truly makes me cry with happiness like this game. Every time I open up a new world, I'm greeted with that close-by tree ready to be absolutely slammed, and I just can't wait for the tracks to start playing, so I can have my very first adventure all over again, and so I can remember the times when I really did hear it for the first time, and have it remind me of not only how far I've come, but how far everything around me has come as well since I first touched the game. The sad thing is, a lot of those early memories are with people who aren't around in my life anymore, or they simply haven't talked to me in what is rapidly approaching to be almost a decade. Those voices of the boys, who I shared my first ever Minecraft experience with, are nothing but a faded memory now. All of them are stuck in my head in their original positions in our first castle on Xbox 360, each fulfilling their own duty to keep society fresh and clean in our little keep. And every time I think of it, it's always the soundtrack that puts the full picture together. It was never the most important game of my childhood, but it always was the one whose music has touched the most hearts in the process. And at the end of the day, that's really what everyone's looking for in a game like this. That's the exact thing that makes this moment click. Music, freedom, and childhood. The next up game is a real doozy. BioShock Infinite, a game that seems to have somewhat slipped under many people's proverbial rugs, and stunningly, it also has two moments that personally clicked with me. When you boot up the game, you're greeted with an odd scene, with an even more odd set of characters. An uneasy feeling weighs down on you as you get left behind by these weird fishermen, at a seemingly abandoned lighthouse in the middle of the ocean, with only one specific phrase stuck in your head.
And wipe away the dead.
You slowly ascend from the shore and into the lighthouse, where the ominous feeling of something bad about to happen really begins to take a grip of you. There's bodies obviously left beaten and battered, the phrase written again and again, presumably out of blood, until you reach the pinnacle of the lighthouse and complete a simple puzzle of bells accompanied by a red sea and red sky upon each tone rung throughout the night.
What in the world is...
You climb into your lazy boy, ready to watch news at 6 with the missus. And then you catapult into the sky. Everything seems to have gone haywire. Your blood is pumping. And then...
Hallelujah.
Pure bliss. I'd be shocked to know if anyone else witnessed this and didn't just feel so full of light. The music is superb. The ambiance is unbelievably bright. The picturesque view from your shuttle paints a beautiful image of the heavenly city, inhabited by flying machines and floating islands. And then the game starts with you wandering those streets, still encapsulated by the atmosphere.
No, Mr. Russell. I've never had an oyster. Mr. Russell, you are terrible.
What makes this moment click? Well, if that initial flare didn't get you, then these side attractions will. As you wander the street, there are multiple sightings to behold of this wonderful world you just catapulted into. Literally. Shop stores and games galore, filled to the brim with happy smiles and cheerful faces. This introduction to a first-person shooter game is just so perfect. Everything just works. From the breathtaking visuals to the quaint interactions with townsfolk, your introduction to Columbia is honestly just perfect, as bringing you into the world that you're going to subsequently destroy. Speaking of which, there's that other moment in Infinite that just clicks. Nearing the end of the game, you go through numerous visions and relapses of partial fragments of woven and unwoven realities, each undone or made back by different choices in different universes. It's all really complex, and honestly, it's a bit too much. But it makes up for its seemingly Rick and Morty sized ego with a simple revelation about you, the player character, and the character that you have protected throughout the entire game, Elizabeth. You are her father. You gave her up to make up for a debt you had to pay, and in doing so, cause your life to spin out into a crime-filled life of debauchery. All of this is caused by one specific moment in time, where two different choices are made, and sadly, in both outcomes, you end a villain. This finale simply cannot be done justice unless you've played the game before. Every little bit of foreshadowing and reference to the ultimate fate of the player character suddenly makes sense in just a few short lines.
It all has to end to have never started, not just in this world, but in all of ours.
Smother him in the crib.
Smother, 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 smother.
And at that moment, a rush of emotion floods through you, as you realize that the whole game was built upon the end goal of this very scene. Infinite's ending is tethered by handcuffs to the entire plot. It's paced wonderfully and is an innately emotional journey, rather than an action-adventure like some of its predecessors, mainly due to the vicarious relationship you foster with your surrogate daughter Elizabeth. Throughout the entire game, you're conditioned to become slightly dependent upon her and her to you. The story is propped up by that relationship and nothing much else, as the world around you evolves and changes as you hop from dimension to dimension, but really, the thing that evolves is your relation to her. And at the end of the day, the writers force you to confront the creature that not only you have found out that you were all along, but also Elizabeth as well. It's in these final scenes that the moment clicks, and true perfection is reached. Back in 2009, no one was ready for what they were about to see. A scene so powerful that it sparked controversy on the mainstream media.
Remember, no rush.
In just a few seconds, the world was caught on fire by that exact clip. No Russian is one of the most iconic missions ever put into a Call of Duty game, and it's not hard to see why it's garnered the reputation that it holds to this day. The mission opens up with you, a man by the name of Joseph Allen, having successfully infiltrated a terrorist group under a fake alias. All of this with the end goal of getting closer to their leader, a man named Makarov. The end goal of your mission is to debrief America of the actions that this group is taking and ensure your position as Makarov's right-hand man. The problem is, the road to Makarov's trust is paved, quite literally, in a sea of blood. The issue I have with this moment compared to the rest of the ones in the video is that I feel that Modern Warfare 2 is a game that doesn't deserve a mission like this within its own narrative. The rest of the game is basically a corny action flick resembling that of Red Dawn. In a game filled to the brim with cheeky scenes and explosions everywhere, it's just so odd that a scene this haunting exists in the same game. It's the equivalent of a Transformers film having an emotional scene akin to The Walking Dead. It's tonally jarring, and honestly, that's what makes it so special. This scene is only on this list because of one specific thing: its shock factor. This scene alone doesn't get its reputation because of the game that it's in. It gets its reputation because of the impact on mass media and the public's perception of violence in video games. Because of what this single scene did for the entire genre of video games, I feel No Russian has its moment click even if you never played the game before, simply because of how it affected the real world more than its own play space. And that, oddly enough, is extremely high praise for something as goofy as Call of Duty. No Russian deserves a spot in this list entirely due to just how much it caused, how much notoriety it has, and just the widespread understanding of what it is at the heart of it. This scene is a moment that has clicked with everyone who has ever played a game, whether they know it now or whether they'll know it later. Now, I know that for a lot of this list it's been on more of the gloomy side of stuff, and I hate to inform you about this, it's about to get even worse. The Walking Dead games are a staple of modern adventure games in the gaming industry. Sadly, that accolade doesn't really matter too much. Adventure games as they used to be back when I was a kid have all been fizzled out of relevance by 2021 and have been replaced with different variations of action-adventure games that fulfilled the same pseudo-niche. Titles like The Last of Us, Uncharted, and Tomb Raider fit the bill of adventure to the more contemporary player base. But when I hear the words adventure game, this game reminds me of what I felt it meant to have that title. Within the 4 Walking Dead games, there are innumerable memorable moments, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to dissect specifically one. You just recently lost a friend earlier and you are alone with a child named AJ. You're essentially incapable of moving due to being bit at the leg. Tension rises as walkers assault where you're held up with more and more enemies and less bullets. You come to the fateful realization that this is the end for you. At least as Clementine, the main character. And then you take up the role of AJ, the child you raised since birth, and use him to keep Clementine safe, eventually culminating in an upsetting finale where Clem is on the brink of death and they share some final words.
AJ, you have to kill me. Don't let me become one of them. Be a good boy. Kill me. No.
This moment works on so many levels emotionally. Every other scene we've discussed messed with your emotions in varying ways, with BioShock being the closest to this scene in terms of human-to-human emotional response. But this scene fits the bill that BioShock tried to fulfill. This scene is the encapsulation of a near decade-long journey for some of us, with it all coming full circle. The first game ended with a tragic hero's death, and the girl he saved would naturally complete the cycle once more and send another youth to try their luck in the new world torn apart by nature's wrath. Except this game takes it a step further. The child you're raising is one you've raised from birth to be a stone-cold survivor. He mentally is completely different from all the other kids you interacted with, and every decision he makes is made to appease you, even if it means cold-blooded murder. This scene works because unlike the last time you were presented with this decision, this time, the child is born with a dangerous perception of reality, where anyone could be an enemy no matter what. He hardly sleeps at night, and when he does, he's only thinking about murder, death, carnage, loss. Very few times does AJ feel happy within the series, and the only thing keeping him truly together is you. That makes this decision so much harder on your first playthrough. You know that in the first game, your choice would be to make this little girl stronger for the times that followed, but now, if you choose something similar, this boy could go over the deep end more than he already is. There are multiple scenes where this is elaborated on, with AJ seemingly enjoying the murder of innocents or otherwise, where he doesn't understand boundaries or how personal positions work within a community. He doesn't understand societal standards or common etiquette. He is, for all intents and purposes, a wild animal. This realization, accompanied with the score of the game and the art style mimicking that of the comics, just makes this entire game so special, and makes this scene hit harder than it ever could if it was put in Uncharted or something like Tomb Raider. The story of The Walking Dead is a story of parenting and coming of age, filled with foils and examples to follow. As one who grew up with this game, it's important to me in a way I don't think I can truly explain. It gave me a chance to think about topics I'd never thought about before, that being parenting, relationships, friendships, survival, growing up in a hostile environment. All of these things are not only enthralling to expose within a game, but they are also great at helping the viewer make an emotional connection to characters. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't in some way view Clementine as essentially a virtual daughter. This game helped me through the roughest times and showed me that no matter how dark things get, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. You simply have to stand back up and push through the pain, because anything is better than giving up. That's what this moment and many others have taught me, and I hope you see now why this moment clicks. Because not everyone has seen it, not everyone has played it, but those who have will keep a lasting memory with them that will always help them forever. side note, I'm going to be doing an even more in-depth look into that whole series, so be ready for that.